Now here is the risk that Brown had to take with I love you, Cleveland, and I love you, Ohio, and a very pleasant welcome to this week's version of Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. And this is today's show, a very special NCAA college basketball version of Bonus Time with Drennan here on Big Play, as we will be devoting the majority of the show to the upcoming March Madness dance party, if you will. Hi, I'm Bruce Drennan along with Ryan Smith. Ryan, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Bruce. I can't believe it's already March Madness. I feel like last year it went by so quick. I know it's going to go by quick this year, but God, you talk about one of the best times of the year, it's March Madness.
Yeah, it really is. And we're going to be joined for 4 segments. We'll cover each regional per segment by Tanner Castora, who's been on my show not only here on Big Play, but when I was with the network. He was actually part of my staff. He's done radio with me on ESPN when I was with them, and he is a college basketball expert. And we will dissect his brain as far as the upcoming tournament, see what he thinks, and I think you'll find it very enlightening. But here in the first segment, let's cover what we have to cover before we dive into March Madness, and that is that the Cavaliers all of a sudden are looking human. 132-119, a loss last night gives them a record of 56-12, which now backs us into a tie with overall record with Oklahoma City. Kawhi Leonard had 33 points in this game. Strus, in a losing cause, had a season-high 24. First quarter, Cavs dominated. They were actually up at the end of that frame, 45-37, but then it was all Clippers. First time that the Cavs have lost 2 in a row since January 22nd and the 25th, when they actually dropped 3 straight. And, of course, on Monday, Orlando defeated the Cavs 108-103 here in Cleveland. And the Cavs lost for the first time since February the 4th as the 16-game winning streak came to an end. The Cavs in that game were without Evan Mobley, obviously, who had that bruised foot. But, Ryan, my question to you, should we be concerned about the lack of late game execution with our team recently?
Yeah, I mean, well, first and foremost, it's funny that we're worried sitting here. The biggest problem, but worry is we won't have home court through the NBA Finals, right? Like, that's a good thing to worry about, the fact that we're that good. But to your point, I'm not worried about it, right? Like, every team goes through a slump, and it happens that I'm not even calling this a slump. It's not like you played the 76ers and you lost. It's not like you played the Trailblazers and lost. The Magic play it tough. You still won the series 3-1 throughout this regular season, and the Clippers aren't a joke either. Donovan Mitchell is in a bit of a slump, I understand, and that's maybe cause for concern, but it's better to slump now than in the postseason, that's for sure. And I think you'll start to see more of DeAndre Hunter being employed in the starting role, and I think that will fix a lot of problems, at least in terms of size, because Max Strus is undersized, and you see that be a problem when you're playing teams like the Clippers, who Zubac had an absolute day against it. But to sit here and be worried about this Cavs team, Bruce, I think if you want to be worried, I think you just want to be miserable.
Well, when I'm off the air and I'm playing golf or I'm chatting with friends in the grocery store that I see or whatever, the prevalent question is, can the Cavs do it this year? And I find myself rendering the same answer over and over again, and that is, it's going to depend on whether we are physical enough in the postseason. Because that's been our downfall the last 2 years. 2 years ago against Boston, or against the New York Knicks, I should say. And last year, even in the victory against Orlando, if you will, we were out-physicaled.
And well, the good part about it is you still have 2 games left with the New York Knicks in this regular season. So if you want to look at this as a chance for the Cavs to redeem themselves against a physical team like the Knicks, then that's the time to do it, right? I'm not going to sit here and be worried. You're not going to play the Clippers again. And not even that I'm scared of the Clippers, but you wouldn't play them again unless you played them in the finals, right? Like, I'm not going to sit here and be that concerned.
Which we won't be playing them in the finals.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No shot in hell. But to sit here and be worried, I think it's just magnifying things right now when the season has been so fantastic. It's just a little bit of recency bias. If this trend continues and it's a 2-week-long drought, sure, I'd be concerned. But the Cavs have proven so much, and in terms of physicality from last year to this year, there is a noticeable difference. Now they have to do it when it matters the most, but I think there absolutely is a big difference from last year to this year.
There's 14 regular season games remaining for our team, and tonight is the first of those 14 as the Cavs will visit Sacramento on this West Coast swing. Well, the baseball season is underway, and last week, if you were with us, we did predict 2 of the 6 divisions, the 2 divisions that included the 2 teams that opened up this season in Japan in the Tokyo Dome, the Los Angeles Dodgers in the National League West and the Chicago Cubs in the National League Central. By the way, next week on our show, we will complete our divisional predictions as we will cover the other 4 divisions, including our division, the American League Central. But I found it fun to be waking up early, as I usually do, and watching baseball from the Tokyo Dome. Packed crowd, standing room only in beautiful downtown Tokyo as they came out, because the Cubs have Suzuki, I should say, and Iman Ganga, the starting pitcher yesterday. The Dodgers, of course, with Ohtani. I mean, that goes without saying, let alone Yamamoto, who started yesterday's game, and Sasaki, the young rookie sensation for the Dodgers, who started today. Dodgers took both games. First one yesterday, 4-1, and today 6-3. Ohtani hit a home run. As controversial as it was, I don't know if you saw it, Ryan, but there was a fan that reached over the wall, and the umpires gave him the homer, which I'm not happy about. If I'm the Cubs, I don't know if that happens here in the States. I think that they wanted, Ohtani is just adored in Japan, and we have great political relations with them anyway, so I don't know if it was necessary, but to me they gave him that homer to appease those great Japanese fans.
Yeah, I mean, Ohtani's adored here in the States even, right? I mean, when you're the best player in the league, you're going to be adored. And what Shohei has done for this sport just in the last 3-4 years,
yes,
especially since getting to the Dodgers, can't be overstated enough, Bruce.
Yes, and today's victory, 6-3, also featured, after Ohtani hit the home run, I watched the whole game today. I really got a kick out of it. Ohtani came to the plate. They had a runner on base, first base unoccupied, and the Cubs decided to intentionally walk Ohtani. And you should have seen if you saw it, you know what I'm talking about. The Japanese fans are all going, they're so polite. They're classy. They're so, not like they rowdy. You hear guys yelling here in the States at games. And there's none of that occurs at a Japanese baseball game. They're so polite. They sit there they're quiet during the pitch rather than, you bum, throw it over the plate. None of that. But they're so quiet. But here they were going like this. They couldn't even go like this, like the old Roman emperors, nothing like that. Just, I was roaring when I saw it, but it was very entertaining, and I think it was very good public relations and thinking on the part of, I can't believe I'm giving Rob Manfred credit for anything, but I think it was a very good move by him and Major League Baseball to do this, and I hope they continue it. I really do.
Yeah, I hate to say it. I hope the Guardians never go to Tokyo because I don't want to wake up that early. But I think it is good for the sport, like you said, and no surprise the Dodgers went 2-0.
Yeah, and the thing that threw me today, I don't know if you noticed, the Cubs were the home team wearing their visiting jerseys, their visiting uniforms. They were wearing the grays and the Dodgers were wearing the whites. Did you see that?
Yes, I did.
What was that?
I have no idea. It's a fantastic question.
What, is that going to be a new trend now in Major League Baseball? I hope not, because, they do it in football now all the time.
Yeah,
in the NFL.
You're right.
They switch them all the time in the NFL, but we will see. But anyway, okay, enough of that. Nothing to really report about the Browns. Same old boring stuff. Who we're going to draft, which quarter. We'll get into it as we get closer to the draft. I want to dive into the NCAA college basketball tournament, and that means Tanner Castora is next. You won't want to miss these 4 segments forthcoming, dissecting all 4 regionals of March Madness. That's next on Bonus Time with Drennan here on Big Play. Well, the NCAA basketball tournament is upon us, and March Madness, here we go. As I promoted when we started the show, my special guest is Tanner Castora. We've had Tanner on my shows, not only here on Big Play, but on Fox. He was actually part of my staff on Fox. Went to Strongsville High School, then to Kent State. Sports anchor of the CBS affiliate in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, for a couple of years before deciding to become an independent freelance journalist, and he's now writing a book about the former head football coach at South Dakota State. He also covers South Dakota State basketball and hosts a weekly radio show as well. I consider him a college basketball expert, and no better person to have on the show to preview the NCAA tournament than Tanner. How are you, my friend?
Doing awesome. Thank you for having me on the show, Bruce. Always an honor.
It is a pleasure having you. Let's dive right into it and start with the South Regional. Auburn is the number 1 seed, and obviously with a 28-5 record, Bruce Pearl has lost 3 of his last 4 games going into the tournament. But he's got one of the best players in the country in Broom, and of course, this would be their second Final Four if they do get there. Tell us your thoughts on Auburn.
When Bruce Pearl took over 11 years ago, he took over a program that had lost 5 straight losing seasons. That is no longer the case. They are one of the best programs year in and year out. Really good resume this season. Wins over Houston, Iowa State, Purdue, Tennessee, Bama, Kentucky, destroyed Ohio State, if you remember that. That was earlier in the season. And they are one of the favorites to win the title. They're right behind Florida and Duke as far as the odds go. But you mentioned it, haven't looked great as of late. Lost 3 of their last 4 games. I get it, good competition, Texas A&M, Bama, Tennessee. Did they get a little complacent? Perhaps. They already had wrapped up the SEC regular season title. And look, I don't care if it's the NBA or college basketball. You can't play great all season long. You're going to have ebbs and flows, but you don't want to be trending down heading into March. Janai Broome, as you mentioned, probably Cooper Flagg has an argument, but Broome will probably be the player of the year nationally. About 20 points per game, over 10 rebounds per night, 3 assists as well. Don't blink at that. A big guy averaging 3 assists per night. That's a guy who can spread the ball around. He's a 5th-year player. He's patient down low in the post. Good, not a great athlete, but knows what he's doing with the ball. They did play Duke back in December. They lost that game. But Auburn, one of the best teams in the country, probably deserving of the number 1 overall seed, although Florida has an argument.
Right, we'll get to them. We'll get to them in a minute. I want to stay in the South and talk about the number 2 seed. That's obviously Michigan State and Izzo. Tanner, the Big Ten, the last team to win the national championship was Michigan State. That was back in 2000, for God's sakes. The Big Ten has made it to the final game 8 times since then and has gone 0-8. Including Ohio State losing to Florida in 2007 and Purdue last year losing to UConn, who, of course, won the back-to-back championships. Izzo didn't start off the season well, but he always gets his team ready for the tournament. How do you look at the Spartans?
They won their 11th Big Ten regular season title under Izzo. It's always interesting with him. You kind of can tell as the interviews progress throughout the season if he likes his team. Sometimes he seems a little more frustrated with them. Sometimes he seems to give them a little tough love. He likes this team. And I think that's a good sign that he knows they can make something happen in March. And there's a lot to like about them. 34 points per game off their bench. That's second most in the country. Frankie Fiddler's a guy who I saw and covered last year in the Summit League, transferred to Michigan State. He's a really good guy off their bench. Jaden Akins is a 4-year player who, by the way, you never hear that anymore. A guy who stays in a program for 4 years. We'll give him a medal. And then Jace Richardson, son of Jason Richardson, former NBA player. He's a really good freshman. Probably will be a top 20, probably maybe 15 pick. They're a really good rebounding team. But the Spartans do have a weakness. They are a horrific three-point shooting team. 325th in the country out of 364 teams. I do like this Michigan State team. I quickly want to mention, though, they're playing Bryant in the first round. And you don't see this out of a 15 seed. Bryant will actually be bigger than Michigan State. Bryant does not have a guy under 6'5" in their starting lineup. Not going to pick that upset, but just something to watch for. But the Spartans, they do have a really good team in East Lansing. You can tell Izzo likes what he sees from his guys.
A couple other good teams in this bracket are Texas A&M and Iowa State. Michigan, of course, is in there. Your thoughts on the rest of the bracketing in the South region, Tanner? And is there a Cinderella in this South bracket?
You know, I'll tell you the one team to look out for is New Mexico. They're a 10 seed. They're playing Marquette. Donovan Dent, must-see TV. The only guy in Division I college basketball right now averaging 20 points per game and at least 5 assists. They're coached by Richard Pitino, obviously son of Rick Pitino. I think they get by Marquette in the first round. But the team I want you to look out for in this region is the Michigan Wolverines. What a turnaround they've had this season. They went 8-24 a year ago, 25-9 this season. They finished second in the Big Ten in the regular season. They won the conference tournament. Dusty May, first-year head coach, was hired away from FAU. If it wasn't for Izzo, he would have been the coach of the year. All that said, I was a little surprised Michigan got a 5 seed. Thought they might have been a 4 seed, maybe even a 3. They've got a really well-constructed roster. I actually picked them to go to the Final Four. I think they're going to beat Auburn in the Sweet 16.
Wow.
They are a interesting roster. Yeah.
I was just going to ask you, you're picking the South region, and you nail us right off the bat. So Tanner here is going with the Michigan Wolverines. All you Ohio State fans, I mean, take that, I guess. But anyway, fascinating stuff. And we will continue with Tanner Castora. We're going to tackle the Western Regional next, and you get your chance, Tanner, to talk about that Florida team as we continue with our NCAA college basketball special version of Bonus Time with Drennan on Big Play. I love you, Menor Nissan. Hi, Bruce Drennan here from my good friends at Menor Nissan, Ray Sminchak, the whole staff. As you know, I've been doing a lot of our shows down in Florida, just returned. Great to be back on the home confines of our beautiful studios here at Burke Lakefront Airport for Big Play. But I got to tell you, I drove my Nissan Rogue from Menor Nissan down to Florida, had the rack up on top with extra luggage. It was absolutely the most splendid, beautiful ride. Just as smooth as could be. My wife also drives a Rogue. We rotated driving down there and back, but I just can't recommend it any more so to you. Get on out there, test drive a Rogue or a Murano or any of the other great products that they have out there at Menor Nissan. Don't forget, they're now in partnership with Infinity of Akron and Infinity of Beechwood. Check those great vehicles out as well. Service department is absolutely fantastic. Went back to the dealership to get maintenance after that long drive down there and back. And give them a call. Set up an appointment. Of course, check out their website at menornissan.com. That's menornissan.com. I love you, Menor Nissan. Well, have you filled out your brackets? Certainly, it's March Madness time, and we all have fun doing so. Tanner Castora, our special guest. Next, we want to tackle the Western Regional. The number 1 seed is Florida, coached by Todd Golden. Over the last 5 weeks, nobody in college basketball has played better than Florida. And what I love most about them, I've seen them a few times, especially coming down the stretch, Tanner, they've got great depth.
Yes, they do. I've heard them jokingly almost referred to a couple times as Noah's Ark because they have 2 of everything. talking guards, wings, big dudes down low. They just, it's like they can rotate a wave in of new players and they don't really lose anything. Now, their best player is Will Clayton. He's a guard, averages about 17 points per game. Actually transferred to Florida from Iona a couple years ago, played for Rick Pitino while at Iona. He's now with the Gators. Elijah Martin, people might remember that name. He played for Florida Atlantic when the Owls went to the Final Four a couple of years ago. He's now with the Gators. They ran through the SEC tournament. And I think they opened a couple people's eyes who maybe were sleeping on them. Just walked through Missouri, Bama, Tennessee. Florida was a team a couple weeks ago who, if you studied the college basketball rankings, they were always hovering around the top 5, in the top 10.
Right.
But they weren't the team that people were, I would say, considering an actual contender.
Especially especially as tough and surprisingly strong as the SEC was this year.
14 teams of their 16 teams made the big dance. That is ridiculous. To be honest with you, I think the top half of the SEC is really good. Not sold on the bottom half, but one team who is for real are the Florida Gators.
The number 2 seed is St. John's, and Rick Pitino, you mentioned him earlier when he was at Iona, is the head coach there. They're 30-4. This is the 6th school that Pitino has brought to the tournament. That's an NCAA record, by the way. It's been a long drought for St. John's. First NCAA tournament appearance since 2019, and they haven't actually won a tournament game in 25 years. Their 4 losses, get this, their 4 losses were by a combined 7 points. How do you look at St. John's?
Tough, man. They're a tough team. Another stat that is remarkable with Pitino, you talked about he's brought 6 different programs to the NCAA tournament. He's also won a conference tournament with 5 different programs, the only coach to ever do that. He is, as if he needed to add anything to his resume to establish himself as one of the best coaches of all time. He's certainly doing it with St. John's. Look, you hear a notion sometimes that a team will reflect their head coach. I don't know if that's always the case. I think it is here with the Johnnies. R.J. Lewis was the Big East Player of the Year. He can really go. Kadari Richardson, he recorded the first triple-double at St. John's since Ron Artest did in the late 90s. No one in the country has more offensive rebounds than Zuby Ejiofor. They're street tough, and they can switch everything defensively, which makes them a really good defensive team. And I kind of feel like they've become America's team, you know? It's almost as like people want to see them succeed. And I think they will. They'll go far in this tournament, but one thing to keep our eye on is their three-point shooting. They're terrible. 30%. That's literally almost dead last in the country. So they will make it a rock fight with you. They've got a lot of different guys who can really go, and obviously a great coach. But they'll have their work cut out for them in this region.
Now, also in this West Regional is Connecticut, the defending back-to-back national champions. They're not the same team, of course, that they have been the last 2 years. Texas Tech is a very good team this year. And, of course, Kansas with Bill Self, a storied tradition there. How do you look at the rest of this bracket, and is there a sleeper Cinderella here?
Well, we got to mention UConn. Obviously, as you mentioned, not the team that they were the last 2 seasons, but let's not count out Dan Hurley, who I think is really good for college basketball. He is arrogant, bold, and brash. Everyone has an opinion of this guy. They're going to get to the second round against Florida. They can't beat the Gators. A team I do want people to pay attention to is Maryland. Good value pick, plus 4,000 to win it all. They've got the talent to do so. A guy you need to know about, Derek Queen, stud freshman from Maryland. They'll make some noise in this region. But the Cinderella here is Drake. Ben McCollum, first-year head coach, came from Northwest Missouri State. He was a Division II powerhouse there, won 4 national championships, comes to Drake, brings along with him a guy named Bennett Sturtz, who plays almost 40 minutes per game, doesn't come out, never sits on the bench, plays the whole time, 19 points a night. They're also an awesome defensive team. Drake won 30 games this season. You don't do that by mistake. I think Drake will get to the Sweet 16. I do ultimately, though, feel St. John's in Florida will get to the Elite Eight. And I'll tell you what, I think that's when the Johnnies run out of firepower. They just can't make threes. And that's not going to fly against Florida, who, as we talked about, if their starters aren't playing well, okay, let's bring in the guys right behind them. We won't skip a beat. I do think Florida will get out of this region, but it will probably be one of the most entertaining regions because let's not forget, Kansas and Arkansas with John Calipari are also in this region. A lot to pay attention to in the West.
Next, we're going to look at the Eastern Regional. Our coverage of the NCAA College Basketball Tournament continues. Bonus time with Drennan on Big Play. All right, let's take a look at the Eastern Regional with the number 1 seed Duke Blue Devils with 31 victories. Stan, John Shire, of course, is the head coach, heir apparent to Krzyzewski there. Are they not the most talented team in the tournament? Number 1 seed for the first time since 2019. That was when Zion Williamson was in the tournament. And Cooper Flagg, Tanner mentioned him earlier as a candidate for Player of the Year. If he's healthy, of course. And what is the status of him? And tell us about Duke, Tanner.
Well, I think you hit it on the head there. They are the most talented team in the entire tournament, and they've got the most talented player in Cooper Flagg. Now, that's the big question mark. Is he going to be healthy? Well, look, I'll tell you this. If you watch the ACC tournament, you saw him sitting on the bench for the last 2 games, didn't play. He was in street clothes, went down, rolled his ankle. He looked way too happy cheering for his team on the bench for a guy who would think he was done for the season. There's no way he's not going to play. I'd be shocked. We might not see him round 1. I think we will. The reports that I've read are pretty positive. I think he's going to play. But I'll tell you what, he's one of plenty of freshmen on that team who are going to be first-round picks. Con Knippel, he is as physically developed as a freshman as you'll see. 6'7", 220. He'll be a top 10 pick. Kaman Malawach is 7'2". He might be a top 10 pick. A guy you need to see, his name is Sion James. I kid you not. I don't know that I've ever seen a basketball player more physically built than this guy. He looks like a legitimate NFL defensive end. Sion James, check him out. They're nearly at the top of every offensive category. Duke's really good defensively, only give up 62 points per game. They held Arizona at Arizona earlier in the season to under 60 points. So Duke, if you want a team with almost no weakness, this is your squad. Duke is fantastic, and they've been fantastic all season long.
Alabama's the number 2 seed in the Eastern region, and they're the nation's top scoring team for the 2nd season in a row, by the way, Tanner. Tell us about them.
They've scored over 90 points 18 times. You don't see that in college basketball. You see that down in Tuscaloosa. Now, here's the question with them as well. Is Grant Nelson going to be healthy? He's a 6'11 forward who plays on the wing. I actually saw him play a lot during college because he started his career at North Dakota State, who's in South Dakota State's conference. So I'm very familiar with Grant Nelson. Now, he left in the semifinals against Florida with a knee injury. When he left in that game, Bama was actually winning 42-41. After he was gone, they got smoked. They cannot make a Final Four without Grant Nelson, so we need to monitor that moving forward in the tournament. But they do have Mark Spears, who's one of the best players in this region. He's an Ohio University transfer. Really, really fun to watch him play. Actually, Bama, deep team as well. 3rd most points off the bench in the NCAA at 34 points per night. But again, the question mark around them, is Grant Nelson healthy? They'll have enough without him to get to the Sweet 16. I'm not sure how much more they can go if he's not ready to play.
Tanner, I want your opinion if Akron has any kind of a chance against Arizona in their game from the local flavor of it. And also comment on Wisconsin out of the Big Ten. Had a very solid season. And who's the Cinderella if there is one in this bracket?
Cinderella's Akron. They are a team who is getting disrespected. They're a 14.5-point underdog against Arizona. And I just want to quickly say, I've gone on your show year in and year out. And 2 years ago, I picked the Wildcats of Arizona to win the national championship. They lost to a 15 seed in Princeton. We're done picking Arizona. I'm taking Akron to win this game. I don't know if you caught it back there, but my goodness, that MAC championship game against Miami, Ohio was fantastic. They trailed by 18 points, came all the way back to win it. Nate Johnson, the MAC player of the year, hit the game-winning shot in the final seconds. Akron had a program record 28 wins. And one thing you'll know about the MAC conference, there is parity. There is not a lot of separation between those teams. To win 17 games in the MAC, and now you're telling me they get a 13 seed and they're almost a 15-point underdog? I don't like that. I'm taking Akron to win this game outright, and I think they have a real shot to get to the Sweet 16. I really do.
I want your opinion quickly on Wisconsin.
Really good team, highest scoring team in Wisconsin since 1971, almost 81 points per game. John Tanji would get the most improved player award if that existed in the NCAA. I think they're good enough to get to the Elite Eight. How far they can go after that, not sure they can beat Duke, but the Badgers can really play.
All right, next and finally, the Midwest region. We'll talk to Tanner about that bracket and his picks for the Final Four. That's next on Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. All right, our coverage continues, the NCAA College Basketball Tournament, and let's finally look at the fourth bracket. That is the Midwest Regional. Kelvin Sampson, Houston, the number one seed, the only team to be a number one seed. That was a number one seed a year ago, by the way. Held opponents to 50 points or less 9 times this year. They're a deadly three-point shooting team, Tanner.
They are probably the best defensive team in the country. Kelvin Sampson gets his guys to buy in. You mentioned the stat, 9 times under 50, 20 times under 60. So when you're playing Houston, you're not going to score a lot. They're 30-4 this year, 14 quad one wins. No one had more quad one wins in Division I college basketball than Houston. They went 16-1 at home, 10-0 on the road. How often do you hear that? Kelvin Sampson is probably one of the best coaches in college basketball, and yet he still doesn't quite get the respect that he probably deserves. Now, Houston, not a very big team. Don't play a guy in the rotation over 6'8". Will that factor in during this tournament? We shall see. They don't have one great player. They kind of do it by committee. LJ Cryer is probably their best player, but not one guy who's going to make it happen night in and night out. They do it by committee, and they do it well. They are one of the best teams in the country, and they're probably now one of the best programs in college basketball.
Number 2 seed is the Tennessee Volunteers of Rick Barnes, who would be making his second Final Four appearance if he can advance that far. Last year, he lost to Purdue in the Elite Eight. How about the Volunteers?
Another defensive juggernaut. If these two teams, Houston and Tennessee, meet in the Elite Eight, the over-under is not going to be very high because they like to get after it on the defensive end. Jemai Mashak and Zakai Ziegler are 2 Defensive of the Year candidates nationally. That's 2 guys on the same roster who could win that award. Zakai Ziegler 4 times has been named to the all-defensive team in the SEC. He's only about 5'11", but he is a dynamite player, really good offensively. So is Chaz Lanier, a really good player from the perimeter for Tennessee. Rick Barnes, another guy who is kind of, changed his perception at his second program. Calvin Sampson started at Indiana, now at Houston. He's done a nice job. Rick Barnes was at Texas, now at Tennessee. He's turned the Vols into a national powerhouse. I do have to mention quickly, in their first-round matchup, that's Tennessee with Wofford, a guy named Kyler Filowich. He's 6'9", he's 250, he plays for Wofford, and he shoots free throws underhand. You got to tune in to see that. Just a little nugget there for you, but I really do
Rick
like
Barry and Wilt Chamberlain. It didn't help Chamberlain much. It was great for Barry.
Great for Barry. And he actually practiced with Filowich, I actually heard this past week. So something to keep your eye on there. But I really do like the Vols. Tennessee has a good team.
All right, in this bracket, the Midwest, Gonzaga, of course, and will they ever reach the promised land and win it all? They've had so many great teams over the years. Purdue, of course, made it to the championship a year ago, got really handled by UConn. They're not nearly as good. And is there a Cinderella in this bracket?
Quickly, I have to mention Gonzaga. 1998, yeah, Elway won the Super Bowl. Jordan and the Bulls completed a three-peat. That's the last time Gonzaga wasn't in the tournament. 26 straight years they've been in the Big Dance. They've been to the Sweet 16 9 straight times. Keep an eye out on Gonzaga against Houston in that second-round matchup. That could be fun. The team I like here a lot is Clemson. They're a complete team, 27 wins, a program record. Only team in the ACC to beat Duke. That means something. Keep your eye on the Clemson Tigers. You mentioned Purdue. I just have a feeling they lose in the first round. I think High Point will beat them. They're an experienced team. It's their first time ever in the Big Dance. High Point will beat Purdue. We also have Kentucky in this region. Not healthy, but Mark Pope has done a very nice job with the Wildcats. I do think Kentucky and Tennessee will meet in the Sweet 16. If they do, that will be the third time these teams played this season. Kentucky beat Tennessee twice. Doesn't happen a third time. The Vols will get to the Elite Eight, and they're going to meet Clemson. I do think Clemson will beat Houston in the Sweet 16. Chase Hunter, he's the leading scorer for the Clemson Tigers. He's been there for 6 years. You don't hear that in college basketball anymore. They'll beat Houston, and I do think ultimately Tennessee advances from the Midwest. They'll beat Clemson in the Elite Eight.
So that gives Tanner's predictions: Michigan, Florida, Duke, and Tennessee. Who wins it all, pal?
I do like the Dukies getting to the national championship game, and they'll meet Florida. Florida is playing probably their best basketball right now, but too much Cooper Flag in the Duke Blue Devils in the end. They will win their 6th national championship in program history.
Tanner, great stuff. Absolutely fabulous entertainment talking about the NCAA tourney. We'll see how it turns out. I'm sure you're going to do better than that prediction about Arizona a few years ago.
Fingers crossed, please, please.
My good friend, thank you so much. Let's do it again.
Please. Thank you, Bruce, for having me on.
Tanner Castora, of course, a young, very talented broadcaster, now based in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, local product out of Strongsville High in Kent State. All right, the Ask Bruce segment is next on Bonus Time with Drennan here on Big Play. Well, if today's show doesn't get you ready for the NCAA college basketball tournament, there's no hope for you. How about that, Tanner, huh, Ryan?
I'll tell you what, I got to make some quick edits to my bracket, I think, before the first game, 12:30 on Thursday, after hearing all that intel that Tanner just dropped on us.
Well, he's got the intel, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's right, because, you know, by his own admission, he had Arizona a few years ago. But the bottom line is that it was so informative in listening to the young Tanner, who knows every program in the country. All right, I'm excited about the NCAA tournament. We all are, this weekend particularly. There'll be some upsets, well, there always is. Ask Bruce segment, fire away.
Alrighty, hey Bruce, do you think the Guardians are any closer than they were prior to spring training to solve the solutions to second base as well as the 5th spot in their starting rotation?
No, and you know, the latest thing that I'm observing is it looks like Vogt is contemplating putting Jose in the number 2 hole in the lineup, which I'm not really opposed to, because theoretically it gives him more at-bats. Now, traditionally, we've talked about, you know, your best hitter is in the 3 hole. That's traditional. I mean, you can go back to Hank Aaron, Willie Mays, I mean, Carl Yastrzemski, on and on and on and on. But I'm not opposed to having Jose in that 2 hole, provided, because Kwanzaa, you know, the tremendous leadoff man, he's going to get on base. which will give Jose RBI opportunities, obviously. And with the DH and the overlap, of course, he'll have opportunities from the bottom of the lineup when they get a rally going. But the real key is going to be those power guys, Manzardo and Noel when he plays, Brennan when he plays, and obviously Carlos Santana, whatever he can contribute. Second base is still up in the air as we conclude spring training. We'll see.
Alrighty, hey Bruce, between the Tigers and the Royals, who do you think has the stronger starting rotation and will give more fits to the Guardians throughout this season?
Well, there's no question Skubal's the best pitcher in the division, may be the best pitcher in the American League, and may develop into the best pitcher in the major leagues. He's that good. But overall, I like the Royals' rotation more than I like the Tigers' rotation. It's a little deeper. But as we've seen, and I think the revolutionary was Terry Francona when he was here in Cleveland with Miller in that bunch. As we've seen the emergence of bullpens, we never heard of any such thing called a bullpen game in the past before Terry. And certainly in our own case, you get that game to the 5th, 6th inning, and I'll take our chances against anybody because that bullpen is just so good.
Alrighty, hey Bruce, we talked about the Tokyo series a little bit, but what were your overall thoughts on it, and do you think Major League Baseball accomplished what they wanted to with those 2 games?
I do applaud, as I said, it pains me to do so, but I have to applaud Manfred and Major League Baseball for this. I thought it was brilliant PR. I just wish more Americans could have seen it, because the game started at 6 o'clock in the morning, these 2 games in Tokyo, with the time differential. But it was so much fun to see those enthusiastic, tremendously knowledgeable Japanese fans fill the Tokyo Dome and cheer for their teams wearing Cubs and Dodgers, mostly Dodgers jerseys, by the way.
Alrighty, last one for you. Hey Bruce, I like this one. Have you ever called in sick to stay home and watch March Madness?
No, but I've done it for the World Series a lot when I was a kid. Oh, Mom. Of course, in those days, the World Series games were in the daytime, unlike now when they start at 11:30 at night. Well, that's about all the time we've got, huh, Ryan?
You got it.
All right, pal. I wish we had more, because when having so much fun with you. All right, next week, as I said, don't forget we will complete our divisional predictions for the Major League Baseball season. March Madness will be well underway. Cavs, of course, winding down the season. Plenty to talk about here on Bonus Time with Drennan on the Big Play Sports Network. I'm Bruce Drennan. On behalf of Ryan Smith, have a wonderful week. Enjoy all that basketball. And until then, as always, and most importantly, you remember,